The duel of honor begins. The twin suns of Zirkal burned bright above the royal arena. Thousands of alien nobles sat in rows, dressed in glowing silks and sharp armor, whispering with excitement. Today was not an ordinary day. It was a duel of honor, a fight to settle a royal challenge under the oldest Zirkal law, and standing at the center of the arena was a human. His name was Cade Mercer, a soldier from Earth who arrived on Zirkal as part of a peace mission. He didn't know their customs. He didn't want to fight. But when the alien champion insulted him and then slapped the Empress, in front of him, Cade had no choice. By law, the High Priest had declared, the challenge is accepted. The human must now fight the champion in a duel to the death. The winner shall claim what the champion protects. Everyone laughed. A human? Against the champion of Zirkal? No one expected Cade to survive 5 seconds. High above the arena, on a golden throne, sat Empress Zarella. She looked calm, but her hands were tight around her seat. The champion was her strongest warrior and her personal guard. He had protected her since childhood. And now he would kill this strange off-worlder in front of all the nobles. Or so she thought. The gong rang. The champion, 8 feet tall, built like a tank, with dark blue skin and eyes like fire, charged at Cade with a roar. Cade didn't move. He just watched. When the champion swung a massive blade, everyone thought Cade would be cut in two. But then, something unexpected happened. Cade ducked. Fast, too fast. In one quick motion, he rolled behind the champion, pulled a short human blade from his back, and slash. The sound echoed. The champion froze. A deep red line appeared across his chest, and then he split in half. The crowd screamed. Blood splattered across the arena floor as the champion collapsed in 2 parts. For a long moment, silence. Zarella stood up from her throne, her mouth slightly open. Her maids gasped. Even the High Priest looked stunned. The human had won. Then the ancient law was spoken. He who defeats the champion in a duel of honor shall claim all the champion protected. That includes his rank, his possessions, and his sacred duties. Zarella's heart dropped. She knew what that meant. The champion didn't just guard her, he was also the gatekeeper of her chambers. And by Zirkal law, that made her and her royal maids part of what he protected. Legally, she now belonged to the human. Zarella stepped down from her throne, rage in her eyes. This law is ancient, she said loudly. It cannot be used like this, he is not even one of us. But the High Priest shook his head. The law is clear. The human is now your rightful guardian, and your legal consort. The nobles gasped again. Cade looked up at the Empress, sweat dripping from his forehead. He was breathing hard, but not from fear. He had no idea what just happened. What did I win? He asked in confusion. A young maid whispered to him, terrified. You won. Us. That night in the royal quarters, Zarella sat in silence. She stared at the wall, angry, humiliated, confused. Who was this human? Why did he fight like that? Why didn't he kill the champion with more pride? He didn't even celebrate. He just stood there like the duel meant nothing. And now he had the right to own her. But instead of claiming her, Cade had walked away. He didn't even look at her body. He didn't make any demands. He didn't act like a conqueror. He simply said, I don't want anything I didn't earn with honor. That confused her more than the duel itself. No Zirkal warrior would ever turn down such a reward. It was tradition. It was power. And yet, this human acted like he didn't care. Zarella stood and looked out her balcony at the arena where her champion had died. She clenched her fists. This human, she whispered, is different. And somewhere deep inside her, she felt a dangerous curiosity awaken. The law cannot be denied. The royal palace of Zirkal had never been so quiet. Not after a victory, not after a death, not after an outsider, a human, changed everything with just one clean strike. Empress Zarella sat frozen in the grand chamber as the ceremonial scribes finished their recordings. Across from her stood Cade. the human who had defeated her champion. His uniform still had blood on it, but his face remained calm, too calm. Zarella narrowed her eyes. She expected arrogance, she expected demands. She expected the human to smile, gloat, or claim her like a trophy, but Cade said nothing. Instead, he looked uncomfortable, like he was the one being punished. The high priest stepped forward. His voice echoed in the vast hall. By blood and blade, the law is sealed. The Empress and her maids are now bonded to the victor. The rites shall begin at sunset. Zarella stood. I reject this law, the nobles gasped. The high priest didn't even flinch. Even an empress cannot reject tradition. She turned to Cade. You don't even know our ways. Why not walk away? Cade looked at her, calm, tired, and a little sad. I didn't come here to take anything. Your champion made the challenge, I just survived it. Zarella stepped closer. Then let us break the law. But a sharp voice interrupted them both. No one can break the law, said a tall, armored woman. It was Lady Veller, Zarella's chief legal advisor. Even if he tries to refuse, the law binds you to him. If the human rejects you, the punishment falls on him. Execution by court blade. Cade blinked. Wait, what? Veller nodded. If you walk away, you die. Zarella was silent. This changed things. The law didn't trap only her. It trapped him too. Zarella's eyes softened, just a little. You can't leave even if you want to? Cade shrugged. Not unless I enjoy getting my head chopped off. The Empress turned her back to him, walking to the tall window overlooking the capital. The city sparkled below. She was royalty, a ruler, a symbol of pride. Now she was someone's prize. Even if he didn't want her, the law said she belonged. And the worst part? The human wasn't acting like a master. He was acting like a prisoner. That night, the palace buzzed with whispers. Maids rushed through marble halls. Servants prepared ceremonial clothes. The nobles waited eagerly, some laughing, others curious to see how a human would handle the consort ceremony. In her private chamber, Zarella stood in front of the mirror. Her silver ceremonial robe sparkled under the light. She looked powerful, but inside she was boiling. Her handmaiden Lissa whispered carefully, Mistress, he doesn't seem cruel. Maybe he won't claim the full right. Zarella snapped, That's not the point. I don't want a stranger's mercy. I want my freedom. Lissa lowered her eyes. Then why does he not smile? Why does he look hurt? Zarella didn't answer. She didn't want to, because Lissa was right. There was something strange about this human. He had killed a warrior twice his size. He had followed a law he didn't understand. And now, he didn't act like a man who had won. He acted like someone who had lost something important. Later, in the ceremonial hall, Cade stood in front of the fire pit. Around him, alien nobles chanted old phrases. Zarella walked in slowly, each step echoing. Cade leaned over to her and whispered, We don't have to go through with this. Zarella replied coldly, If you don't, you die. That's the law. Cade looked around. Your people love rules. Zarella looked at him sideways. And you don't seem to love anything. There was a pause. Then she added, just loud enough for him to hear, But maybe that's what makes you dangerous. The warrior who refused a throne. The palace guards had never seen anything like it. A human, just a human, was now being guarded like a king. And yet, he refused to sit on the throne. The golden seat meant for the champion, now empty, stood at the edge of the royal court. Cade looked at it once, just once, then turned away. He chose to stand behind Empress Zarella, like a silent shield, like a shadow. Whispers filled the hall. Why doesn't he take command? The law says he owns her now. Then why does he act like her servant? Even the nobles were confused. On Zirkal, power was everything, If you earned it, you used it. But the human didn't seem interested in power at all. He only seemed interested in watching the exits. Zarella had noticed it too. He didn't stare at her. He didn't touch her. He didn't issue orders. He only asked one quiet question when they were alone. "Do you have enemies?" At first, she had laughed. Too many to count. But when she saw his eyes, serious, alert, and tired, her smile faded. He wasn't joking. He was planning. That night, something in her chest stirred. No one had ever protected her without asking something in return. No one had ever asked her about her enemies, only about her power. And this human, this strange soldier, didn't act like a winner. He acted like someone waiting for the next attack. It came sooner than anyone expected. The following morning, Zarella entered the Hall of Ancients to attend a private council meeting with 5 noble elders. The room was dim, lit by firebowls and covered in murals of past rulers. Cade was not allowed inside by ancient custom, but he waited outside the door, arms folded, watching every guard with silent suspicion. Inside, Zarella sat on the high seat, ready to discuss politics. Then she noticed something. The teacup offered to her was steaming. Too fast. The air smelled wrong. One of the elders gave a signal. Another stood slowly, and just as Zarella lifted the cup, Cade burst through the doors. "Don't drink it!" The nobles rose in anger. "This is sacred ground." But it was too late. Cade's boot smashed the cup from her hand. The liquid hit the stone floor and hissed. Poison. Deadly. Instant Zarella stared at the puddle in shock. Her skin turned pale. One elder shouted, "He broke protocol, arrest him!" 2 guards lunged at Cade, spears raised, but the human moved like lightning. He twisted one guard's arm, grabbed the spear, and knocked the second flat with the wooden end. Then he turned the tip toward the nobles. His voice was calm, but full of fire. "Try that again, and the next thing I split in half won't be ceremonial." Silence. Then, a slow clap echoed through the hall. It came from Elder Varn, the oldest member of the court. "I warned them," he said, smiling with thin lips. "You don't poison an empress protected by a death worlder." Zarella looked at Cade. He was standing, in front of her now, breathing hard, muscles tense, eyes locked on the door. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Because in that moment, she finally understood something. He wasn't her owner. He wasn't her servant. He was something far more rare. He was her protector, and he never even asked for that role. Later that night, Zarella visited Cade in the soldiers' barracks. He was cleaning his blade quietly, alone. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. He didn't look up. "You saved my life," she said softly. He shrugged. "That's what soldiers do." She stepped closer. "You had every reason to. Let me die. You could have ruled alone after that. Why stop them?" Cade looked at her, tired but sincere. "I didn't come to your world to rule. I came to survive." He paused, then added, "And maybe help someone else survive too." For the first time, Zarella didn't see a warrior. She saw a man, not just strong, but honorable. She nodded slowly and said, "You don't act like a king." Cade gave a small smile. "Maybe that's why your people are scared of me." A secret plot in the shadows. Not every enemy holds a blade. Some hide behind soft voices and gentle smiles. And one of them was already inside the palace. The kitchens were quiet after midnight. Steam still rose from the long metal pots. The tolier fires had cooled, and the servants had left for rest. But 2 shadows remained. One was Lady Valar, chief royal advisor. The other was a noble from the outer house, his face hidden beneath a dark green hood. They stood near the spice racks pretending to inspect ingredients, but their whispers were razor sharp. "He's too calm," the hooded noble said. "The human doesn't want power, he wants control. That's even worse." Valar didn't blink. "He's changing her." Zarella is no longer acting like a ruler, she's asking his opinion. So what's your solution? Valar's eyes glowed faintly. We end the story the same way it started, with blood. That same night, in her small quarters, Lisa, Zarella's youngest handmaiden, was awakened by a strange sound. Shh! A faint hiss, like a message being slid under her door. She rose quietly, her long braid trailing behind her, and picked up the sealed paper. Her heart dropped. It was written in high script, meant only for royal eyes. But she could read it. The human will be removed. Do not interfere. Choose wisely who you stand with. She held the message for a long time. Then she looked toward the Empress's chambers, where Cade now stood guard. Lissa had seen how he looked at Zarella, not with lust, not with command, but with duty, and how Zarella looked at him, not with fear, but with curiosity. Maybe even something deeper. This wasn't just politics anymore, this was personal. The next morning, Zarella sat by the window of her private study. The skies were clear, but her thoughts were not. She hadn't spoken to Cade since the poisoning attempt, not because she was angry, but because she was confused. He saved her, fought for her, protected her without claiming her. Even now he kept his distance. He stood in the hallway like a silent wall, always watching, always ready. She had been raised to expect dominance, control, command, but Cade offered only protection. Why? That question echoed in her mind over and over. She was still deep in thought when Lissa entered quietly and knelt beside her. Your Majesty, the maid whispered. There's something you must see. In the back gardens, hidden from the main palace, Lissa opened a carved stone in the fountain wall. Inside was the sealed message. Zarella read it once, then twice. Her hands tightened. They're planning to kill him. Lissa nodded. Yes, tonight. Zarella stood, her voice cold but calm. Gather the others, my maids, the loyal guards, anyone who has seen who he really is. Lissa looked up, surprised. You mean to protect him? Zarella didn't answer with words. She only whispered, if they want to challenge what he's built with honor, then they'll answer to me. That night, while the nobles dined in the great hall and music played softly in the distance, a group of silent assassins crept toward Cade's quarters, dressed as servants, blades coated in poison. They thought he'd be sleeping. They were wrong. As the door creaked open, the first assassin stepped in and felt a cold edge against his throat. Cade's voice was a whisper in the dark. I've been waiting for you. But before the fight exploded, dozens of cloaked figures stepped in behind him, Zarella's royal maids, and Zarella herself, wearing black armor laced in royal purple. Her voice rang like a bell. You wanted to spill his blood on my floors? Then try it, over my dead body. The assassins froze, and for the first time in Zirkal's history, an empress stood beside a human, not as a captive, not as a reward, but as a willing shield. The night she touched his scars, the human had saved her again. But this time, Zarella didn't feel victorious. She felt haunted. After the assassination attempt, Cade returned to his quarters without a word. His hands were bruised, his shirt torn. But he asked for no treatment. He simply locked the door behind him and sat on the cold floor. He didn't eat, didn't sleep. And when Zarella passed his room later that night, something stopped her. Not a sound. Not a voice, just a feeling, a pull, like his silence was calling to her louder than any scream could. She entered without knocking. The door wasn't locked anymore. Cade sat with his back against the wall, staring at the floor. His sword lay beside him, untouched. His chest rose slowly like he was trying to breathe through pain. Zarella didn't speak. She just walked closer and sat across from him, knees folded. They sat like that for a while. Quiet. Until she finally whispered, Why do you never ask for help? Cade's voice was low. Because no one ever gave it. Zarella's heart clenched. She looked at him. Really looked at him. Then, without warning, she leaned forward and reached for his arm. He flinched slightly, but didn't stop her. She pulled up the sleeve of his uniform, and what she saw stole her breath. Scars, long, jagged, brutal. Not from one war, from many. Old wounds that had healed wrong. Burn marks, blade slashes. Even one that looked like it came from a whip. She moved to his back, gently pulling the fabric aside. More scars. Some looked like they went deep into the muscle. Zarella blinked hard. Who did this to you? Cade didn't answer. Not for a long time. Then finally he said, People I trusted. Zarella touched one of the old wounds, slowly tracing it with her fingers. You were betrayed, she whispered. He nodded. I was used, he replied. Trained to fight. Praised when I won. Abandoned when I bled. Zarella looked into his eyes, and for the first time she saw a fracture beneath the iron. Not just a warrior, not just a protector, but a man who had survived not because of love, but because of pain. She lowered her hand. I thought you were dangerous, she said softly. Cade gave a bitter smile. I am. No, she said, shaking her head. You're wounded. There's a difference. He looked away. It doesn't matter. Your people don't care who I am. They only see what I can do. Zarella stood, then slowly sat beside him, shoulder to shoulder. She didn't touch him this time. She didn't need to. Her presence said enough. I see you, Cade, she whispered. Not as a champion, not as a weapon, not even as a consort. She paused. I see you as the first person in my life who stood in front of death and didn't hide behind my name. Cade didn't speak, but the air between them shifted. Something heavy lifted. Not romance, not desire. Something deeper. Trust, and in that quiet moment, under the dark sky of an alien world, a bond began to grow. Not by law, not by blood, but by shared loneliness. Betrayal at the royal feast. Betrayal at the royal feast. The chandeliers of Zirkal's grand hall sparkled like stars, casting golden light over 1,000 nobles. Music played, laughter echoed, cups overflowed with glowing drink. It was a celebration in honor of peace between species, a night to honor Cade, the human warrior who had won the Empress by law, but never treated her like a possession. But under the smiling, masks and fine robes, someone had come to end his story. Cade stood near the far wall, dressed in a formal tunic, still stiff, still uncomfortable in royal clothes. He hated this kind of thing. Crowds, politics, fake smiles. He only stayed because Zarella had asked. Him. She now sat at the head of the table, her face calm but her eyes always flicking toward him. She still didn't trust her court, neither did he. But tonight, she smiled. Because after so much blood and fear, she believed for a moment they were safe. She was wrong. Near the kitchens, a servant in a red cloak handed a gold cup to a tall guard. The guard bowed and stepped forward toward Cade. The cup was meant as a royal gesture, the drink of honor. Zarella watched with pride. So did the nobles. The room grew quieter as the guard approached. He lifted the cup. And Cade reached for it, but then Lisa screamed, "No, don't drink." The room froze. Cade paused, cup in hand. Zarella stood so fast her chair fell over. The guard panicked, reached for his belt. Too late. Cade's instincts snapped into motion. In one move, he struck the guard's arm, flipped the cup, and clang. The cup hit the floor. Its liquid burned through the polished tiles like acid, poison. Again. But this time it wasn't hidden. It was a message. This was a public execution attempt, and in front of every noble. Cade had just been marked for death. Chaos. erupted. Guards grabbed weapons, nobles shouted, some tried to flee, others simply watched in frozen horror. Zarella stormed down the steps, her voice thunderous. Who ordered this? The poisoned guard tried to run. Cade tackled him to the ground in 2 moves, then ripped off his helmet. It wasn't a guard. It was a noble in disguise, one of the council members who had sworn loyalty. Zarella stood over him, shaking with rage. You swore peace, he spat. No peace with Deathworlders. You've given our throne to a creature. Cade said nothing. He just stepped back, letting the nobles see who truly struck first, letting them see who tried to destroy peace. Zarella turned to her people. Look at him. He fought for me. He bled for me. And when I was almost killed, he stood. Between me and the blade. Who else here would have done the same? The room was silent, because they knew the answer. That night, Cade didn't return to his quarters. He stayed in the shadows of the royal balcony, watching the city lights, jaw tight. He hated celebrations, and now he knew why. Behind every smile was a dagger. Behind every toast, poison. Zarella joined him, wearing a black cloak over her gown. She didn't say anything at first, then quietly, I asked you to stay for me. And I did, he said flatly. She looked at him. I didn't ask you to nearly die. Cade sighed. That just seems to happen when I stick around. She stepped beside him. So leave, she whispered. You don't have to stay. You never did. He looked at her for a long time. If I left, who'd watch your back? That moment between them was more powerful than 1,000 royal vows. And in that silence under the alien sky, Zarella reached out and took his hand. Not as a ruler claiming a subject, not as a woman bound by law, but as someone who no longer wanted to walk alone. Human blood, alien loyalty. The throne room had never been this full, not even for a coronation. Every noble, general, elder, and warrior packed into the grand chamber. The air buzzed with fear, rumors, and disbelief. Because today, a human was about to speak before the court of Zirkal, and not as a prisoner, not as a consort, but as something far more dangerous. A symbol. Cade stood alone at the center, unarmed, uncrowned, unwelcome, but not afraid. His body still carried the bruises from the attempted poisoning. His tunic was simple. No medals, no armor, just a quiet defiance in his eyes. Zarella stood above, watching him from the throne, not as a master, not as a possession, but as his equal. Her voice rang out. Speak freely, Cade of Earth. He looked up. And then, for the first time in this alien world, he let them hear the human heart. I came here for peace. I was told your people respected honor, strength, and tradition. I've bled to survive those traditions. I've followed your laws, even when they cost me freedom. But every time I earned something, someone tried to take it back. Why? The court stayed silent. Because I'm human? Because I don't look like you? Because I didn't conquer what I won, I respected it? The nobles shifted, uncomfortable. Then Cade stepped forward, louder now. You call yourselves proud. You wear armor and robes. You hold titles. But you're terrified of change. You tried to poison me twice. You tried to break the Empress with rules and then break me with silence. He looked straight at them. But humans don't break. We burn. We bleed. And we keep standing. Zarella's eyes widened. The nobles were no longer whispering. They were listening. Then the high priest stood. The law was followed, he said. But peace is fragile, and many still question your place among us. Cade nodded. Then let me offer something. He stepped back and knelt. Gasps filled the hall. Even Zarella stood up, but Cade's voice stayed steady. I don't want a throne, I don't want a title, I don't want a crown. I want your trust, I want her life safe, I want peace. He paused, then added, not because I'm your law-chosen consort, but because I've proven myself. Not by bloodline, but by blood spilled. A moment of silence. Then Zarella descended from the throne. She walked across the room slowly, each step echoing, and stood beside him. She looked at the court and said, "We follow laws built by the dead. But this man taught me how to live." She helped him stand, then turned to the nobles. "From this day forward, Kate of Earth shall be known not as my possession, but as my partner. Not by force, not by custom, but by choice." The court erupted. Some cheered, some protested, but none walked out. Because in that one moment, the unthinkable had happened. A human had been accepted not through war, but through loyalty. Not through dominance, but through honor. And as Cade stood beside Zarella, hand in hers, scars across his back and peace in his eyes, the people of Zirkal began to realize something terrifying. Humans weren't just warriors. They were the future.